Welcome. I am truly grateful to have you here. Please, make yourself comfortable and take your time. This story was crafted with care, dedication, and deep respect for your attention. I hope it brings you joy, reflection, and perhaps even a touch of nostalgia. Once again, thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. The year is 1347, a time before anyone had truly grasped the shadow looming over Europe. You wake up in the middle of a medieval winter, not to a gentle alarm, but to a faint, acrid grit on your tongue, even before your eyes open. The air in the hovel is thick, not just with the familiar stink of damp straw and unwashed bodies, but with a palpable texture, a heavy, cold dust that coats the inside of your mouth. You stir, and the coarse wool of your blanket, heavy with moisture and the accumulated dirt of weeks, feels like a shroud pressing against your face. You try to draw a deeper breath, but the air is dense, tasting faintly of soot and decay, a constant, unpleasant companion. Your eyelids feel sticky, and when you finally manage to pry them open, the gloom is profound. Weak light struggles through a narrow opening, illuminating not warmth but countless motes of dust dancing in the frigid air, each one a tiny particle of the pervasive filth that saturates this space. You can feel your own hair, matted and heavy, clinging to your scalp, carrying its own layer of unspoken grime. Pushing yourself upright is an effort. Your joints protest, aching from the cold stone beneath your palate, and you feel the rough fabric of your tunic, stiff with dried sweat and external grime, pull against your skin. It's a second skin, heavier, itchier than your own. You swipe a hand across your face, and it comes away with a fine, greasy film, a constant, unwelcome coating you no longer even attempt to scrub away. From a dark corner, a rhythmic drip, drip, drip of water echoes softly, each drop a cold, liquid measure of time passing in this damp, sunless existence. You hear the faint scuttle of something small, unseen, moving beneath the straw, a sound so common it no longer stirs a reaction, only a low hum of acceptance. You see others in the hovel, stirring slowly from their sleep, their forms indistinct, their own faces smudged, their clothes just as heavy with the pervasive weight of their world. Their quiet movements, their slow blinks, are a mirror of your own daily battle against the inescapable tide of cold and grime. This isn't just a place you live in. It's a state of being, a constant physical embrace of the unwashed, the unkempt, the undeniable. If this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it there? Share in the comments. Sometimes, the greatest struggle isn't against a sudden catastrophe, but against the relentless, grinding pressure of simply existing in a world that asks so much and offers so little comfort. You push aside the heavy wool flap that serves as a door, stepping out from the dimness of the hovel into the narrow lane. The air outside is certainly colder, a biting wind whipping down the alley, but it carries the same familiar medley of smells, only now amplified. The pervasive stench of human and animal waste, rotting food scraps, stale ale and damp earth, is so utterly constant, so woven into the fabric of the city itself, that your mind barely registers it as offensive anymore. It's just the smell of the world. Your boot sinks a little into the churned mud and straw that coats the street, a slick, organic carpet that never truly dries. You navigate around a puddle of stagnant water, thick with an oily sheen, without even thinking. Your eyes scan the street, not for beauty or novelty, but for obstacles. A sleeping dog, a discarded cartwheel, a fresh splatter of something you instinctively avoid stepping in. You see others doing the same, their gazes unfocused, their movements practiced, their faces etched with a common indifference to the squalor that surrounds them. A woman carrying a basket of meager produce steps daintily over a heap of refuse, her expression unchanging, her eyes fixed on some point in the distance. A child, no older than 5, is squatting by a gutter, oblivious, poking at something indistinguishable with a stick. No one scolds him, no one pulls him away. It's just how things are. You pass a group of men gathered near a flickering brazier, their shoulders hunched against the cold. Their tunics, like yours, are stained and patched, the fabric stiff with accumulated dirt. Smoke from their small fire mingles with the general haze that hangs perpetually over the city, a gray blanket that softens the edges of everything. You glance at their faces, smudged with soot and grime, their eyes sunken. There's a weariness there, a kind of deep-seated acceptance that settles on them like the very dust on their clothes. You don't see disgust or revulsion in their eyes when a rat scurries boldly across the path near their feet. Only a brief, almost imperceptible flicker of acknowledgement. It's just another inhabitant of the lane. A cart, heavily laden with something unseen under a tarp, creaks past, pulled by a scrawny, bony horse. Its hooves churn the mud, splashing a fine spray of dirty water onto your leg. You don't flinch, don't react. Your sleeve brushes against the rough stone wall of a building, leaving a fresh streak of grime. It becomes part of the tapestry of your clothing, indistinguishable from the other marks. This constant low-level assault on your senses, this pervasive presence of decay, has long since ceased to be an emergency. It's simply the texture of daily life, the backdrop against which everything else plays out. You breathe it in, step through it, and carry it with you, not even noticing the effort it once took to simply exist within it. The world truly begins to shrink when your body is always asking for more, when the very act of living becomes a relentless, internal negotiation with a hunger that never quite goes away. You are thrust into the swirling eddy of the market square, a human tide pulling you along with its collective momentum. The first sensation is the sheer press of bodies. Shoulders brush yours, elbows jostle, the rough wool of strangers, tunics scrapes against your own. You feel the damp warmth of breath on your cheek as someone passes too close, then the cold air again, immediately replaced by another body. The ground beneath your worn boots is a mashed, uneven quilt of mud, straw, and trampled vegetable matter, making every step a negotiation. The noise is a roaring beast, the shouts of vendors hawking their wares, sharp and piercing, the bleating of sheep penned nearby, a mournful counterpoint, the dull thud of a butcher's cleaver against a block, rhythmic and unsettling. Over it all, a constant low hum of hundreds of conversations, a murmur you can never quite distinguish into words, just a dense, living sound. And the smells, they're a chaotic symphony. The sharp tang of raw fish from a nearby stall, mingling with the sweet, cloying aroma of bruised apples, the earthy scent of root vegetables, and the ever-present underlying funk of human sweat and animal waste. A constant reminder of the city's deeper pulse. Your gaze darts through the kaleidoscope of faces, tired, hopeful, wary, haggling. You watch a merchant slam a fist on his stall, his face red with indignation at an offer, while a child, no older than yours, weaves effortlessly through the forest of legs, a small, quick shadow. You try to push your way towards the bread cellar, the simple craving for a fresh, warm loaf, a strong pull, a small luxury you might afford today. You squeeze between a woman clutching a live chicken, its feathers ruffling against your arm, and a stoic old man with a sack slung over his shoulder, his eyes fixed ahead. Then, from somewhere just to your left, lost within the general clamor, you hear it. A wet, guttural sound. Not quite a cough, not quite a sneeze, more like a sudden, uncontrolled expulsion of air and moisture. A choked sputter that cuts through the market's roar for just a fraction of a second. It's quickly swallowed by the noise. Indistinguishable from the other human sounds, the endless little noises bodies make when pressed so close. You don't even turn your head. Your shoulder bumps against someone else's. The sound registers for a moment, a fleeting blip, then becomes another thread in the immense, complicated tapestry of the market. You keep moving, pushing forward, the scent of fresh bread getting a little stronger. In this churning, teeming ocean of life, individual waves barely make a ripple. Everything just keeps moving, keeps flowing, an endless, undeniable current. You are thrust into the swirling eddy of the market square, the human tide pulling you along with its collective momentum. The sound, that single wet sputter from earlier, still clings to the edges of your awareness. A tiny seed of unease that has begun to sprout. Now every breath you take, every breath others take, feels different. You're walking through the throng again, but your senses are sharper, more attuned to a new kind of threat. The press of bodies, once just an inconvenience, now feels less like a vibrant crush, and more like a smothering blanket. You instinctively flinch when a man coughs sharply beside you, a short, dry hack that sounds suddenly too loud, too close. Your eyes dart to his face, searching, assessing, a new, unbidden suspicion stirring. His eyes are red, his skin pale, but he just rubs his chest and continues on, oblivious to the sudden knot in your stomach, the quickening of your own pulse. You pull your rough tunic collar a little higher, a futile gesture against the biting chill and against something far less tangible, but it feels like some small shield. The air, already heavy with the familiar market smells of rotting refuse, strong spices and damp wool, now seems to carry an invisible menace, a potential whisper of illness. You find yourself subtly holding your breath when someone passes too near, their garment brushing against yours, or trying to angle your head away from a group talking loudly, their words carried on warm, moist plumes of air. You notice how people instinctively turn their heads when they cough, or try to muffle a sneeze into an elbow, small, ingrained courtesies that now feel less like politeness and more like desperate, instinctual acts of self-preservation. Or is it just you seeing it that way now, a new lens, distorting the familiar? A woman standing near a fish stall lets out a deep, rattling sigh, a sound that vibrates with exhaustion, a deep tremor from her chest. Your gaze snags on her, on the way her shoulders slump, the dark circles under her eyes, the faint sheen of sweat on her brow despite the biting cold. You wonder if it's just the burden of a long day, or something more insidious, something catching. You try to tell yourself it's just the usual winter ailments, the persistent coughs and sniffles that come with the damp, frigid air. But a colder dread is beginning to creep into your thoughts, settling deep in your gut. The sheer volume of people around you, the close quarters, the unavoidable physical contact, It all feels less like a vibrant, bustling market, and more like a vast, uncontrolled experiment in contagion. Every breath taken nearby feels like a shared risk, a lottery ticket you never asked to buy, where the prize is merely not getting sick. You pull your hand back from reaching for an apple on a vendor's table. Had that man behind the stall just cleared his throat a little too forcefully? Your fingers hover, then slowly retreat, suddenly unwilling to touch anything, to connect with the shared surface of the world. You find yourself watching people's mouths, their noses, their every small gesture, a new, unsettling vigilance that wasn't there before. The constant low hum of the crowd, the shouts, the bleating, it all seems to recede slightly, replaced by a sharpened awareness of the raw, vulnerable act of breathing. Everywhere, all around you, an inescapable dance of shared air. The world suddenly seems to have narrowed, focused on the fragile exchange of air, on the invisible currents that bind everyone together in a terrifying, inescapable intimacy. This awareness, once absent, is now a heavy cloak, a constant hum in your ears. The rough, stiff wool of your tunic scrapes relentlessly against your skin as you shift, a constant, low-grade irritation that has become as familiar as your own heartbeat. It's a persistent itch, not quite painful, but always there, a texture that reminds you of its presence with every slight movement. You try to pull the garment tighter around your shoulders, but it offers little warmth against the pervasive chill that permeates every fiber, every corner of the small, damp room. It feels as if the cold itself has woven itself into the fabric, a silent, unyielding adversary. Your breath hangs visibly in the air, tiny clouds dissipating quickly in the gloom. The stone walls weep with moisture, a thin film of dampness that seems to soak into everything it touches, including the straw beneath your meager pallet. You can feel the chill of it seeping upwards, through your worn clothes, into your very bones. It's a deep, pervasive cold that makes your fingers ache and your toes feel like blocks of ice, even tucked away. You try to clench your fists, to rub some warmth into your numbing digits, but the heat quickly leaches away, absorbed by the relentless air. You finally push yourself upright, your muscles stiff and protesting, as if they've been sculpted from the very ice outside. Your bare feet hit the packed earth floor, and a jolt of shocking cold shoots up your legs. It's not just cool, it's piercingly frigid, drawing a sharp, involuntary intake of breath. You quickly pull your feet back, tucking them under you for a moment, trying to delay the inevitable full contact. Around you, the other forms huddled in the room stir with similar groans and shivers. A young woman across the room pulls a ragged blanket tighter around her shoulders, her face drawn, eyes still glazed with sleep and the cold. Her movements are slow, deliberate, each action seemingly requiring immense effort against the encroaching chill. You force yourself to stand, stamping your feet lightly on the cold ground, a small, futile attempt to conjure some circulation. The dampness from the walls is a constant companion, a silent drip somewhere in the corner marking the passage of time. You look at your hands. The skin is chapped and reddened, the nails brittle from the constant exposure to cold and harsh work. Even the air you breathe feels raw, scraping against your throat as you inhale, a reminder of the unforgiving environment that surrounds you, inside and out. The thought of stepping outside into the open, biting wind makes you shiver again, a reflex that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the body's deep, ingrained protest against the incessant, gnawing cold. You pull your arms tighter across your chest, trying to huddle into yourself, to create a small pocket of warmth that the world seems determined to steal. The body, resilient as it may be, remembers every touch of cold, every persistent scratch, a relentless ledger of small discomforts that accumulate into the very texture of existence. You reach for your tunic, pulling the coarse wool over your head. It catches slightly on your hair, then settles heavily on your shoulders. The fabric isn't just rough. It's stiff with the dried sweat of days, perhaps weeks of wear, a deep, personal musk intertwined with the lingering smoke from the hearth and the damp earth. You've long forgotten what it feels like to pull on something truly fresh, something that doesn't already bear the indelible imprint of your own life and the lives of others upon it. Your skin prickles as the stiff material scrapes against it, a familiar, low-grade irritation that fades into the background noise of existence. As you step away from the meager warmth of the bed, you glance back at the straw-filled pallet. The sackcloth that serves as your blanket is a patchwork of stains and faded hues, matted and compacted from countless nights of restless sleep. The straw beneath it is crushed flat, smelling of damp and stale air, a faint, sweet decay. You can almost feel the phantom weight of bodies that have rested there, the accumulated grime clinging to the fibers. The very idea of a clean sheet, crisp and white against the skin, feels like a distant, impossible dream, a whisper of luxury from another world. What would that even feel like? To lie down on something untouched, unmarred, something that carried no trace of the day's toil or the body's grimy reality. The thought is almost a pang, a longing for a purity you seldom encounter. You wipe your hands not on a clean cloth. Such things are precious, used only for the most vital tasks, like binding a wound, but on the worn fabric of your trousers. It's a futile gesture, merely shifting the dirt from one surface to another. You see a woman nearby, attempting to scrub a stained piece of linen in a bucket of murky, cold water, her knuckles red and raw from the effort. It's a monumental chore, requiring precious water, soap made from rendered animal fat and ash, and endless physical exertion. Her movements are slow, deliberate, each rub of the cloth an act of sheer will against the stubborn marks of daily life. The small act of washing a single item becomes an epic battle, far from the effortless daily cleanse you might imagine. The very air in the hovel feels heavy with unseen particles, a constant, silent rain of dust, ash, and human detritus. You touch the wooden table. Your fingers come away with a fine film. Every surface tells a story of constant accumulation, an unyielding layer of the world settling upon everything. Cleanliness in this life is not a state of being, but a fleeting moment, a brief reprieve from the inevitable return of the grime. It's a battle you simply cannot win, so you learn to exist within the constant embrace of the unwashed, the worn, the perpetually lived in. The true comfort, you realize, isn't just about warmth or food, but about the small, almost forgotten grace of a fresh surface. A moment when the world doesn't press its grimy weight upon you quite so relentlessly. The heavy wooden mug feels cool and rough in your calloused hand. You lift it to your lips, the faint aroma of stale barley and something slightly sour reaching your nose before the liquid touches your tongue. It's ale, yes, but thin, watery, almost transparent in the dim light of the tavern. You taste it. A weak, slightly bitter flavor that quickly dissipates, leaving a flat, unsatisfying residue. You can almost feel the water that has stretched it thin, diluted its strength, diminishing its ability to warm the chill that has settled deep in your bones. It's a common trick, a way to make meager supplies last, but it offers little comfort, little of the robust warmth you truly crave. Beside your mug on the scarred, grimy wooden table sits a piece of bread. It's a dark, dense loaf, its crust already dry and cracking. You pick it up, feeling its surprising weight. Your thumb brushes against a faint, greenish fuzz blooming in a small patch on one side. Mold. You sigh, a soft, weary sound lost in the low murmur of the tavern. You know better than to waste it, to discard what little sustenance you have. With your thumbnail, you carefully scrape away the offending patch, watching the greenish spores flake onto the table, joining the accumulated dust and crumbs of countless other meals. You don't question it, don't feel disgusted. It's simply a necessary ritual, a small act of reclamation in a world where nothing is ever truly pristine. You tear off a piece of the bread. It's chewy, a little tough, its flavor earthy and slightly sour, perhaps from the poor grain used, or the hurried baking. You chew, slowly, deliberately, trying to coax every bit of nourishment from the dense crumb. Your stomach rumbles, a dull, aching protest against its perpetual emptiness, a hunger that is never fully sated, only temporarily appeased. You watch a man at a nearby table devour a piece of dried meat, tearing at it with strong teeth, his movements quick and decisive. You envy his portion, a fleeting thought, then turn back to your own humble meal. The ale is finished quickly, offering no real warmth, no buzz, just a momentary dampening of the hunger pangs. You pick up the bread again, its weight suddenly feeling heavier, more significant. This isn't a meal to be favored for its flavor, but for its simple, brutal functionality. It's fuel, nothing more, a bridge to the next moment, the next meager offering. You can feel the rough texture of the grains on your tongue, the slight bitterness, the faint mustiness that lingers even after the mold is scraped away. It's the taste of survival, unadorned, unembellished. The human body is an incredible machine, capable of finding sustenance and even moments of grim contentment in the most ungenerous offerings. It's a testament to raw persistence, where nourishment becomes less about pleasure and more about simply enduring. The dull ache in your stomach has become such a constant companion, such an integral part of your days, that you barely notice it most of the time. But now, as the thin ale and moldy bread from earlier quickly settle, the emptiness begins to assert itself again. It's not a sharp, sudden pang, but a slow, persistent gnawing, a hollow space that resonates deep within your gut. You can almost feel your body demanding more, demanding fuel, demanding the warmth and substance it needs to simply continue. You find your hands idly rubbing your belly, a subconscious gesture, a vain attempt to soothe the internal tremor. Your energy levels are low, a constant, low-grade exhaustion that makes every task feel heavier, every step more deliberate. You watch a child running through the street, full of boundless, unthinking energy, and a fleeting, almost forgotten sensation of effortless movement sparks in your memory. Now, even lifting a heavy basket or enduring a long walk to the well feels like a monumental effort, a draining of finite reserves. Your muscles protest, a faint tremor running through your limbs, signaling their depletion. Your mind, too, feels the strain. Thoughts drift unbidden to food. The crisp snap of a fresh apple, the hearty texture of a stew, the rich aroma of roasted meat. These images flash in your mind's eye, vivid and tantalizing, only to sharpen the immediate awareness of your own lack. You see a woman sharing a small portion of cheese with her child, and your gaze lingers for a moment too long, a tiny flicker of envy, quickly suppressed. It's not malice, just the raw, animalistic craving of a body perpetually on the edge of want. You consciously pull your attention back to the task at hand, trying to focus on the conversation of the men nearby, on the layout of the cobblestones, anything to escape the insistent voice of your stomach. The cold outside, usually just a physical discomfort, now feels amplified by this internal hollowness. It seems to leach the remaining warmth from your core, making you shiver more easily, feel more exposed. You pull your threadbare cloak tighter, but it does little to address the chill that starts from within. This isn't just a fleeting hunger, a missed meal. It's a deep-seated reality, a continuous thread woven into the fabric of your physical being. It affects your patience, your mood, making you quicker to irritation, slower to smile. It's the silent, relentless burden you carry, more insidious in its constancy than any sudden pain. You learn to live with it, to push it to the back of your mind, but it never truly leaves, a constant, gnawing presence. The world truly begins to shrink when your body is always asking for more. When the very act of living becomes a relentless, internal negotiation with a hunger that never quite goes away. You feel a sudden, unexpected pressure on your arm, a firm grip that holds you steady. Your eyes, clouded with fever and a dull, throbbing headache, try to focus. The air smells acrid, a mix of stale sweat, unwashed bodies, and something sharp and metallic, faintly like old blood. You're lying on a rough cot in a crowded, noisy room, the muffled moans of other sick individuals a constant backdrop to your own misery. A figure leans over you, their face indistinct in the dim light, but you can feel their gaze, intense and unyielding. Then, a cold, sharp object touches your inner elbow. It's a sudden, startling chill against your hot, clammy skin. You flinch, trying to pull away, but the grip on your arm tightens, immovable. The metal pressing against you feels surprisingly heavy, its surface smooth, almost oily. You don't see it clearly, but you know what it is. A lancet. A small, wicked blade designed for one purpose. You squeeze your eyes shut, bracing yourself. There's a moment of tense stillness. The sound of your own ragged breath loud in your ears, louder than the distant murmurs. Then, a quick, intense sting. It's not a deep cut, but a sharp, sudden prick, like a bee sting, only colder, more deliberate. You feel a warmth bloom immediately on your skin, a trickle that quickly spreads, sticky and wet. You don't dare open your eyes. The warmth continues to flow, a steady, rhythmic pulse against your skin, and you can almost feel your own life force draining away, drop by slow drop, into the basin held beneath your arm. The metallic scent in the air intensifies, mingling with the coppery tang of fresh blood. The pressure on your arm changes, shifts, then lessens. You hear a soft slosh, the sound of liquid moving. When you finally open your eyes, the figure is wiping the small cut with a piece of rough cloth, then binding it tightly with a strip of linen. Your arm feels lighter, strangely hollow. The world swims a little, a faint dizziness washing over you, but the throbbing in your head for a brief moment feels slightly dulled. The figure moves on, already turning to the next cot, the next ailing body, the lancet catching a glint of light as it disappears into the shadows. You are left with the sticky sensation of dried blood on your skin, the tight bandage, and a profound, lingering weakness. You just lie there, listening to the murmurs and the distant moans, feeling the cold seep back into your exhausted limbs. There are moments when the cure feels as stark and unforgiving as the illness, a brutal necessity in a world that offers little in the way of gentle comfort or true understanding. The thick, acrid smell hits you first, even before the small, dark earthenware cup is brought close to your face. It's a pungent blend of something metallic, something like burnt earth, and a sickly sweet, almost cloying herbal scent that makes your stomach clench in anticipation. Your throat, already raw from a cough that rattles your chest, feels tighter. You're propped up on a thin straw mattress, the persistent damp chill of the room doing little to soothe the feverish heat that ebbs and flows through your body. A stern face, shadowed by a hood, hovers above you, their eyes dark and unreadable. A firm hand presses the cup to your lips. You try to turn away, but your head is gently but decisively held in place. The cold rim of the cup brushes your skin, and then the liquid begins to trickle into your mouth. The taste explodes on your tongue, overwhelmingly bitter, foul beyond description, like earth mixed with bile and some unknown burning root. It scalds your throat as you swallow, a reflex more than a choice, leaving a trail of fiery discomfort down to your chest. You gag, a desperate, retching sound, but the hand keeps the cup steady, forcing you to take another gulp, and then another. Each swallow is a new wave of revulsion, a battle against your own body's protest. You finally push the empty cup away, your hand trembling. A wave of nausea washes over you, making the room spin, your eyes water, not from sadness, but from the sheer assault on your senses. Your stomach churns violently, threatening to expel the vile concoction, but you clamp your jaw shut, clenching your fists into the damp straw, willing it to stay down. The burning sensation in your throat lingers, a constant reminder of the ordeal, and a hot flush spreads across your skin, making you feel even more unwell than before. You cough, a deep, racking sound, and the bitter taste of the medicine seems to rise again, coating your tongue. The hooded figure simply watches, their expression unchanging, before moving to another patient on a nearby cot, carrying the same small, dark cup. You hear a muffled groan, then a retching sound, followed by the clatter of the cup. It's a familiar scene, a shared suffering in this desperate attempt at a cure. You lie back, feeling weaker, more depleted, the bitter taste a pervasive presence in your mouth. A testament to the belief that something so unpleasant must surely be effective. You close your eyes, the world still spinning, the nausea a constant companion, wondering if this harsh remedy is meant to purge the illness, or simply your will to resist it. Sometimes, the very acts we take to save ourselves inflict their own unique brand of suffering, forcing us to question whether the path to healing is truly better than the pain of the disease itself. You're trying to concentrate on mending a tear in your tunic, your fingers stiff with the cold. When it starts, the sound doesn't announce itself with a sudden clang, but rather eases into your awareness. A dull, heavy thud that vibrates through the packed earth floor. Boom. Then a pause, long enough for you to almost forget it. Boom. And again. And again. It's the church bell, and its rhythm is unmistakable. Too slow for celebration, too deliberate for warning. It's the death knell, a sound that has become as common as the barking of dogs in the street. The sound is not close, not right on top of you, but it's pervasive. It seems to resonate through the very stones of the city, a low thrumming that settles in your chest, a deep echo that bypasses your ears and finds its way directly to the pit of your stomach. You feel it as a familiar, cold weight, a tightening, a faint tremor. You glance up from your work, not looking for the source, but scanning the faces around you in the crowded room. No one screams. No one cries out, not anymore. A woman across from you, stirring a pot over a meager fire, simply sighs, a long, drawn-out exhalation that speaks of profound weariness. Her eyes, red-rimmed and tired, meet yours for a brief moment, a shared understanding passing between you without a single word. Another one gone. The tally increases. You try to focus again on the needle, pushing the thick thread through the coarse wool, but the boom, boom, boom keeps time with your own heartbeat, a slow, relentless pulse that seems to drain the energy from your limbs. How many times have you heard it today? You've stopped counting, the sheer number rendering any attempt futile. It starts with the first gray light of dawn and continues intermittently throughout the day, sometimes fading for hours, only to resume its mournful song with renewed vigor, a ceaseless lament for the departed. Each toll is a life extinguished, a family grieving, another empty space in a city that feels increasingly hollowed out, even as its streets remain densely packed. The air itself feels heavy, charged with the vibrations of the bell, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, now tinged with an unspoken sorrow. The sound is a constant thread in the tapestry of daily life. It's mixed with the shouts of vendors, the distant cries of children, the creak of cartwheels in the mud. Yet it cuts through everything, a persistent, somber counterpoint to the mundane activities of survival. You hear a young boy, playing with a wooden toy, pause mid-motion, his head cocked slightly, listening. He doesn't understand the meaning, not fully, but even he feels the shift in the air, the collective pause that accompanies each heavy strike of the bell. He looks to his mother, a silent question in his wide eyes. She just shakes her head, a small, sad gesture, and gently urges him back to his game, a futile attempt to shield him from the omnipresent reality. You push the needle through the fabric one last time, tying off the knot. The bell continues its slow, methodical tolling, a steady, unwavering drumbeat against the relentless backdrop of everyday struggle. It's no longer a shock, not even a surprise, just another unyielding aspect of the world you inhabit. It is the rhythmic heartbeat of a city slowly giving way, a constant reminder of the fragile line between one breath and the next, a sound that promises nothing but the continuation of its own mournful song. You're used to it now, that low, mournful boom. It's a constant, rhythmic presence in the background of your days, a somber heartbeat to the city's frantic pulse. You are scrubbing a pot, the grit of stale porridge clinging stubbornly to the bottom, your knuckles red and sore from the cold water. You expect the next deep thrum of the bell, an almost unconscious anticipation that keeps a silent tally in your mind. You finish a particularly difficult scrape, waiting for the familiar vibration to follow. But it doesn't come. The silence is jarring. Not a quiet silence, but an absence so profound it feels like a physical thing. A vacuum suddenly pulling at your ears. The scraping of your pot against the hearth, once a mere whisper, now seems ridiculously loud, grating and sharp. You straighten up, slowly, the cold water dripping from your hands. You strain your ears, listening, a prickle of unease starting in the back of your neck. The wind still whistles through the cracks in the hovel walls. The distant cries of market vendors still carry faintly. A child still whimpers softly from a corner, but the deep, grounding sound of the bell, the one that tells you another soul has departed, is gone. Completely. You look around the room. A woman mending a tunic has paused, her needle hovering over the fabric, her head slightly cocked. An old man, usually hunched over his meal, has stopped chewing, his eyes wide and unfocused, listening to the sudden, unnatural void. A shared, unspoken question hangs heavy in the frigid air, more chilling than the cold itself. Has it stopped ringing because there's no one left to mourn? Or worse, has the bell ringer himself fallen silent? The absence is more terrifying than the presence ever was. When the bell tolled, it was a confirmation of loss, yes, but also a sign of continuance, of ritual, of a system, however grim, still functioning. Now there is only this unnerving quiet, this hollow space where a profound sound should be. Your own breath feels loud, raspy in your throat, and you find yourself holding it, just for a moment, to listen more intently to the utter lack of that expected sound. The sounds that are there, the distant cry, the wind, the low rumble of a cart, seem amplified, almost menacing in their sudden prominence, filling a space that should be occupied by something far heavier. You can feel the tension in the room, a collective holding of breath, a shared fear rippling through the small group. No one moves, no one speaks. The weight of the silence presses down, a leaden blanket that smothers any other thought, any other sensation. It is a waiting, a dreadful anticipation of what this sudden, complete quiet might signify, a chilling foreboding that the familiar rhythm of death might have been replaced by something far more absolute. Sometimes, the loudest message comes not from a sound, but from its terrifying, inexplicable absence, leaving a hollow echo in the very fabric of existence. A low, guttural murmur begins to rise from somewhere beyond the warren of alleyways. It's not the usual market chatter, nor the familiar shouts of street vendors. This sound is deeper, a rumbling current beneath the city's everyday noise, and it pulls at your attention, a discordant note in the chaotic symphony. You're moving through a narrow lane, the air already thick with the familiar scents of damp stone and refuse. But now a new, sharper smell seems to cut through it. The acrid tang of fear, perhaps, or something burning. You quicken your pace, your worn boots slipping slightly on the slick cobblestones. A sudden, inexplicable urgency seizing you. You want to believe it's just a brawl, another drunken skirmish, but the growing intensity feels different, colder. The murmur grows, swelling into a distinct, hungry roar. It's a terrifying chorus of shouts and curses, of heavy footsteps and splintering wood, a sound that promises devastation. You can feel the vibrations now, a low tremor through the soles of your feet, as if the very ground beneath you is shaking with the mob's collective rage. You instinctively press yourself against a grimy stone wall, trying to make yourself smaller, seeking some small, futile refuge as the sound washes over you, a tidal wave of human fury. Other people in the street react. A woman drops her basket, spilling apples across the mud, her eyes wide with terror. A man pulls his child close, shielding their face with a protective arm, his own face pale and drawn, his jaw clenched. No one speaks, but their shared, panicked glances speak volumes, conveying a universal dread. You hear the sharp crack of glass, followed by a chilling, unified cheer, a cruel, triumphant sound that scrapes along your nerves, a sound that is profoundly, unnervingly human. Through a narrow gap between two leaning buildings, you catch a brief glimpse of flickering orange light, dancing wildly against the deepening twilight. Torches. Then, the first figures surge into view, a dark, churning mass of bodies, their movements agitated, chaotic, driven by a terrible purpose. Their faces are a blur, contorted with anger and something wild, their fists raised, some clutching makeshift weapons. Their shouts are indistinguishable now, a guttural, primal scream that overwhelms all other sounds, ripping through the very fabric of the city. You can almost feel the heat of their collective rage, a palpable wave of destructive energy radiating outwards, singeing the air. The whole street thrums with a terrifying, unpredictable force, a beast unleashed. You hold your breath, your heart hammering against your ribs, a desperate, frantic rhythm against the roar. Your hands are clenched, your knuckles white, and every muscle in your body is tensed, poised to flee, to disappear, to become invisible. The roar fills your entire world, echoing not just in your ears, but in the deepest, most primal parts of your mind. A sound that speaks of ancient, unreasoning terror, a cold dread that chills you far more than the winter air. In moments like these, when the world seems to turn on itself, you understand that some threats are not of disease or hunger, but of the sudden, brutal unleashing of human fear and malice, a storm that can sweep away everything in its path, leaving only devastation and a lingering bitter ash. The acrid smell of smoke still hangs heavy in the air, a metallic tang of burnt wood and something else, something sharper clinging to the dampness. You pull your cloak tighter, not just against the persistent chill, but against the cold tendrils of fear that have now seeped into the very atmosphere of the city. The roar of the mob has faded, replaced by an unnerving quiet, a heavy, accusing silence that feels more potent, more dangerous than the previous chaos. You step carefully, your worn boots crunching on scattered debris, shards of what might have been pottery, a charred piece of fabric. The ground feels different, colder, as if it too has absorbed the recent violence. You walk with your head down, but your eyes dart, scanning the narrow lanes, the darkened doorways. Every shadow seems to hold a secret. Every whispered conversation a potential accusation. People move differently now. Their usual hurried pace has slowed to a wary shuffle. They avoid eye contact, their gazes fixed on the mud beneath their feet, yet you feel the weight of their stolen glances. Quick, suspicious flickers that dart between faces, between figures. No one speaks openly of what happened. Not here, not yet. But the air is thick with the unspoken, with the suffocating pressure of a question. Why? Why this plague? Why this suffering? And then, silently, insidiously, who is to blame? You catch snippets of hushed conversations as you pass. Desperate, urgent whispers about wells poisoned, about strange practices, about outsiders. The logic is thin, fragile, but the underlying need for an explanation, for a tangible enemy in the face of an invisible one, is palpable, a desperate, visceral hunger. Your stomach clenches, a different kind of ache now, a cold dread that twists deeper than physical hunger. It's the unsettling awareness that when life becomes incomprehensible, people will find a target, a vessel for their terror. You see a woman clutching a small wooden cross, her lips moving in a silent prayer, her eyes filled not just with grief for the dead, but with a raw, burning fear that could easily turn to something else, something ugly. The very air you breathe feels charged with this new, collective suspicion. You find yourself subtly avoiding groups, staying close to the walls, trying to make yourself less noticeable, less a part of the restless, churning fear that now permeates every corner of the city. You see the fear in others, eyes, a cold, calculating fear that easily morphs into something far more dangerous than simple panic. It's a fear that needs an outlet, a face, a human form onto which to project the incomprehensible horror that stalks everyone. It is easier, you realize, to point a finger at a neighbor, at a different face, a different way of life, than to face the cold, indifferent hand of fate. The city, already sick with disease and despair, now feels poisoned by suspicion, a slow-acting venom spreading from heart to heart, tearing at the fragile bonds that hold people together. When the unknown brings unimaginable terror, the human spirit, in its desperate search for order, too often creates its own cruel, destructive logic. You press your hand flat against the heavy, wooden door, feeling the rough, splintered surface bite slightly at your palm. It's not just a door, it's a barricade, a crude patchwork of scavenged planks nailed unevenly across the original, weaker wood. You can feel the sharp points of nails, driven home with desperate force, just beneath the surface, a testament to the hurried, frantic work. The air inside the small room is stale, thick with the scent of damp earth, unwashed bodies, and a pervasive tension that has settled like dust on every surface. It's a closed-in smell, a scent of fear and confinement, intensified by the lingering, faint odor of smoke from earlier, from outside. Your fingers trace the jagged edge of a plank, feeling the grain, the ancient rot. This makeshift barrier is your only shield, a fragile promise of safety against the unspoken threats beyond. Through the narrow, uneven gaps where the planks don't quite meet, you catch slivers of dull, gray light, offering no true view of the street, only an impression of the outside world, a world that has grown increasingly hostile. The city's sounds are muffled here, distant. The sharp cry of a bird, the creak of a cart, the low, unintelligible murmur of voices. But they now hold a new, sharper edge. They sound like warnings, like the restless stirrings of something dangerous, just out of sight, pressing in on all sides. You lean your forehead against the cool, unforgiving wood, listening. The thick silence of the room feels heavy, punctuated only by the shallow breathing of the few other figures huddled in the corners, their faces gaunt, their eyes wide with a similar, quiet dread. You don't speak, they don't speak. There's no need for words. The splintered wood, the heavy beam propped against the frame, the silence itself, they all scream the same message. This is all you have. This fragile barrier is the only thing standing between you and the swirling chaos that feels increasingly ready to consume everything. Your gaze drifts over the rough-hewn beam you helped wedge into place, bracing it against the doorframe. It's solid, weighty, but feels terribly inadequate, a mere twig against the imagined force that could come crashing down. You can almost feel the wood groaning, the nails straining, under the sheer pressure of your collective fear. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of the wind outside, sends a jolt through your weary body, a tightening in your chest, a momentary paralysis. You are trapped here, by choice, by necessity, a prisoner of your own desperate need for protection, and the barricade, in its crude, defiant stand, is both your savior and a constant, suffocating reminder of the threat that made it necessary. When the world outside becomes a place of overwhelming dread, the smallest, most fragile barrier can feel like an entire fortress, a desperate, physical manifestation of hope against an encroaching, shapeless terror. You are pressed shoulder to shoulder in the winding street, the rough wool of a dozen strangers, garments scraping against your own. The air is thick with the damp, earthy smell of the city, overlaid with the immediate, bodily odors of the crowd, sweat, stale breath, unwashed skin. You can feel the warmth of bodies beside you, behind you, in front of you, a constant physical contact that should offer comfort, perhaps, or a sense of shared existence. Yet, as you navigate the narrow path, buffeted by the ceaseless flow, you feel an immense, profound distance. Your eyes meet countless others as you are pushed along, fleeting glances across haggard faces, tired eyes. There's no recognition, no spark of connection, only a vacant acknowledgement, a mirror of your own fatigue. Each person seems wrapped in their own private world of struggle, a silent battle against cold, hunger, and an ever-present anxiety. A young mother grips her child's hand so tightly, her knuckles are white, her gaze fixed on something unseen in the distance, oblivious to the jostling around her. A man, his head bowed, shuffles forward, his movements slow and deliberate, as if wading through unseen water. Their closeness is a physical accident, not a choice, and it binds them in proximity, but not in spirit. You try to make sense of a distant vendor's cry, to hear a familiar melody from a passing minstrel, but the sounds are just noise, a cacophony that only intensifies the feeling of being utterly alone within it. The collective hum of the city, once a comforting sign of life, now feels like a vast, indifferent ocean where individual voices are swallowed whole, unheard. You reach out, almost instinctively, to steady yourself against a passing figure, but your hand drops, unused. They move past, unnoticing, their world as insulated as yours. There's a shared struggle, yes, a common enemy in the plague, in the bitter cold, in the constant hunger. But this commonality doesn't forge bonds. Instead, it seems to draw people further inward, making each soul a solitary island amidst a churning sea of humanity. You glance at the faces again, tired, weary, perhaps even afraid, and see not companions, but reflections of your own isolated fear. Each person is burdened by their own worries, their own losses, their own desperate fight for survival, and there's no room, no capacity to truly connect with the person pressed against them. The silence between you, despite the clamor, is deafening, a hollow space where warmth and empathy used to reside. You move with the crowd, a single current in a river of isolated streams, each flowing towards its own unknown destination, utterly, terrifyingly alone. It is a peculiar cruelty of hardship that the very conditions which bring people physically close can simultaneously drive their spirits to the most profound, unbreachable solitude. The air parts with a sharp, sickening whistle. Then a wet, fleshy thwack that echoes oddly in the cold, still air. You flinch, a sudden jerk of your shoulders, your stomach lurching with an involuntary spasm. You're pressed tight against a grimy stone wall in the marketplace, part of a silent, immobile throng, your breath shallow, held captive in your chest. Before you, figures move in a grim, rhythmic dance. Bare backs glisten in the weak winter light, already streaked with crimson, the skin stretched taut, then violently released with each strike. The next whistle. The next wet slap. A guttural gasp from one of the scourged, swiftly cut short, absorbed by the hungry silence of the crowd. The metallic tang of blood is faint but unmistakable, carried on the damp air, mingling with the familiar stench of refuse and unwashed bodies. You can feel the cold seeping into your exposed skin, but a deeper, colder dread has taken root in your gut. It's the chill of witnessing something so stark, so brutal, something that strips away any illusion of human gentleness. You scan the faces around you. A woman's jaw is clenched so tight her teeth must ache, her eyes fixed on the raw spectacle with a mixture of terror and grim piety. A man beside you stares straight ahead, his eyes glazed, unseeing, as if he is trying to disappear into the very stones. No one speaks, no one moves to intervene. Only a collective, shallow breathing, a shared tension that vibrates through the packed bodies. The repetitive sound of the lash creates its own terrible rhythm, a drumbeat of suffering that pounds against your ribs, rattling something deep within you. It's an unbearable sound, yet a captivating one. Drawing every eye, holding every breath, your gaze is pulled back to the grotesque ballet before you. The arms wielding the lashes move with a practiced, relentless efficiency, their faces hidden by hoods or simply a blankness that defies understanding. Each blow is delivered with a precise, almost ritualistic force, a desperate plea to an unseen power, a raw offering of pain. You can see the skin breaking, the muscles twitching, the body's involuntary recoil from the brutal impact. It's not just a spectacle of pain, but a raw, public testament to the desperation gripping the city, a collective purging, a desperate cry for divine mercy, or perhaps simply a release of unbearable, collective tension in a world with too much suffering and too few answers. You want to look away, to shut your eyes and block out the sight, but a grim fascination holds you. A terrible magnet pulling your gaze back to the raw, flayed flesh, to the relentless, unforgiving movement of the lash. In times of unimaginable trial, humanity often turns inward, seeking purification through suffering, creating harsh spectacles of pain as a desperate, collective prayer, or a grim, public reflection of the invisible torment already gnawing from within. The wet slap of the lash, the grunts of pain, the sickening scent of blood, they slowly fade as you force yourself to walk away, to turn your back on the gruesome spectacle. But the feeling, the cold dread, the visceral discomfort clings to you, a sticky residue that won't wash away. You walk with your head down, your hands shoved deep into your threadbare pockets, feeling the rough wool, a small anchor against the internal churning. The sounds of the city, the market cries, the distant church bells, feel muffled, distant, as if your ears are filled with cotton. You pass a small church, its ancient stone cold and damp, a heavy silence radiating from its open doors. You hesitate, then step inside, drawn by an unseen force. The air is even colder here, filled with the faint, sweet smell of old incense and something else, something bitter like despair. The light is dim, filtering through narrow, grimy windows, casting long, distorted shadows that dance with the flickering candlelight. A few figures are scattered through the pews, hunched over, their faces buried in their hands, their bodies trembling with silent sobs. Their grief is a palpable presence, a thick, heavy blanket that smothers any other emotion. You move to an empty pew, the cold, hard wood biting through your worn trousers. You kneel, the rough, splintered surface digging into your knees, a familiar discomfort that you barely register. You close your eyes, trying to find solace, to find connection, but your mind is a chaotic storm. You hear the choked cries of a woman in front of you, a desperate, raw keening that sounds less like prayer and more like an open wound. You feel the tremor of her anguish, a ripple through the cold air. Is she begging for mercy, pleading for forgiveness, bargaining for a lost loved one, or for her own uncertain future? You try to pray, to form the familiar words, but they catch in your throat, hollow and meaningless. What do you ask for? Protection? Forgiveness? An end to the endless suffering? The image of the flayed backs, the wet slap of the lash, flashes behind your eyelids, stark and terrible. Was it an offering? A desperate, painful sacrifice to an angry God? A plea for him to turn his vengeful gaze away? You open your eyes, looking at the crude wooden cross at the altar, the figure of Christ hanging, suffering. You feel no comfort, no sense of divine presence, only a profound, aching emptiness, a chilling isolation in the face of so much inexplicable cruelty. The cold of the stone, the chill in the air, the emptiness in your gut, it all merges into a single overwhelming sensation of utter insignificance, a tiny speck of life caught in an indifferent, brutal cosmic storm. In times of ultimate despair, when reason fails and hope dwindles, the human heart, in its primal fear, seeks to bargain with the heavens, offering pain and suffering as a desperate plea for understanding, or simply for an end to the incomprehensible. Your fingers brush against skin that feels like old parchment, thin, cool, and frighteningly dry. But it's not the skin that commands your full attention. Nested in the palm, partially gripped, are three small, dull coins. They rest in a hand that trembles almost imperceptibly, a fragile vessel barely holding on to this last earthly burden. You're huddled beside a crude pallet, the air around you thick with the familiar, cloying scent of illness and stale breath. The room is dim, lit only by the weak, gray light filtering through a single, grimy opening, casting everything in shades of muted despair. The person on the pallet, their face drawn and pale, their eyes sunken hollows, turns their head slowly towards you. There's no strength in their gaze, just a profound, silent plea. Their fingers twitch, a faint, desperate attempt to push the coins further into their palm to make sure you see them. You reach out, your own hand feeling clumsy, hesitant, against the stark finality of the moment. You gently pry their fingers open, the cold metal of the coins touching your own skin. Three small, unpolished circles, each one a whisper of value, of transaction, of a life that once clung to such things. As you take them, the dying hand relaxes, slowly, the last vestiges of its grip dissolving. The skin that held them now feels utterly lifeless. A profound emptiness where warmth and purpose once resided. The coins feel heavy in your own palm now, far more than their actual weight. They're a last testament, a final act of agency, perhaps for a simple burial shroud or a prayer from a priest, or even a small comfort for those left behind. They are cold, hard markers of a life slipping away, leaving behind only these tangible fragments, these small, insignificant sums that suddenly hold the immense weight of a completed existence. The silence in the room presses down, broken only by the shallow, ragged breaths from the palate, each one a precious, fragile exhalation. The metallic chill of the coin seems to deepen the cold around you, a stark contrast to the fleeting warmth of a dying life. You feel the rough edges of the coins against your skin, a tangible connection to the fading spirit beside you, a silent promise to fulfill this last unspoken request. The weight in your hand is not just metal, but a heavy mantle of responsibility, of remembrance for a life that is almost gone. It is a stark reminder, in the face of inevitable departure, how the material world, even in its smallest forms, can become an echo of all that was, and a fragile bridge to all that remains. You step out from the hovel, the 3 small, cold coins still heavy in your pocket, their weight a constant reminder of the life that just slipped away. The air outside is sharper, but the cold of death feels as if it has seeped into the very atmosphere of the city. You walk towards the edge of town, where the earth is disturbed and fresh, raw pits gape like open wounds in the frozen ground. The path is muddy, churned by countless footsteps and the heavy wheels of carts. As you approach, the scene unfolds, stark and unflinching. Before you, laid out on the damp earth, are bodies. Many bodies. They lie side by side, not in neat rows, but in a chaotic tableau, awaiting their final descent into the common grave. The pervasive smell here is different, sharper, more final. The sweet, undeniable odor of decay, mingled with the earthy scent of freshly dug soil. It's a smell that bypasses your nose and settles directly in your chest, a heavy, suffocating weight. You look at them. A merchant, easily recognizable by the remnants of fine, if now stained, wool on his tunic, lies next to a pauper, his rags barely clinging to his gaunt frame. A young child, small and still, rests beside an old woman whose face is etched with the hardship of decades. Here, in this grim assembly, all distinctions have vanished. The silken thread and the coarse homespun are equally soiled, equally without warmth. The hands that once held ledgers and counted gold are as stiff and unyielding as the hands that toiled in the fields, gnarled with a lifetime of labor. All faces are pale, eyes sunken, mouths slightly agape, fixed in a universal expression of final surrender. The cold earth embraces them all equally, indifferently. There's no priest offering blessings, no individual rites. Just a few figures, their faces grim and set, moving amongst the dead with quiet, practiced efficiency, preparing them for the pit. They handle the bodies with a dispassionate reverence born of sheer exhaustion, their movements slow and heavy. You watch as a man, gently, almost tenderly, closes the eyes of a young woman, then steps back, already turning to the next still form. There's no time for individual sorrow here, only the grim collective task of accommodating the relentless march of the dead. The cold coins feel even heavier now, a stark, meaningless burden against the profound equality of this moment. They were for a shroud, perhaps, a prayer. But here, in this vast, shared ending, what value do they hold? All are stripped bare, reduced to the same fragile, transient form. The winter wind whips around you, biting and cold, carrying the whispers of countless lost lives, a silent, powerful testament to the fact that when death truly comes calling, it does not discriminate. It simply takes. In the face of such profound, unyielding finality, all human constructs, all earthly distinctions crumble away, leaving behind only the stark, undeniable truth of our shared vulnerability. The sudden, sharp taste of copper blossoms in your mouth, dry and metallic, as if you've bitten down on a coin. Your stomach clenches, a cold knot forming deep in your gut. You're navigating a narrow, winding alleyway, the usual cacophony of the city strangely muted here. The air is thick with the familiar stench of waste and damp earth, but now a new, unsettling current flows beneath it. A palpable tension, almost electric, that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. You hug the shadows, your worn boots silent on the packed earth, every sense heightened. A sudden, sharp cry slices through the air, high-pitched and raw, quickly stifled. It's not a shout of anger, but something closer to desperation, a plea cut short. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, oppressive silence that follows the sound. You press yourself even tighter against the cold, grimy stone wall, willing yourself to be invisible. Your breath catches in your throat, shallow and ragged, and the metallic taste in your mouth intensifies, a visceral manifestation of pure, unadulterated fear. Your eyes dart, straining to pierce the deepening gloom, searching for the source, for any sign of movement, any hint of the danger you instinctively know is lurking. Further down the alley, a shadow detaches itself from the deeper darkness. It moves with a predatory stealth, then another, and another. They are not the usual beggars or merchants. Their forms are too fluid, too swift, their intentions too clear. You hear a low murmur, harsh and guttural. Not words you recognize, but the tone is unmistakable. Menace. Your muscles tense, ready to bolt, but nowhere feels truly safe. No direction promising escape. The air itself feels colder, sharper, filled with an unseen threat that pricks at your skin. Your hands clench into fists, nails digging into your palms. A small, futile attempt to exert control over a situation where you have none. You hear a muffled thump, then the faint clatter of something falling. Your mind races, conjuring images of violence, of desperate struggles. This isn't a world of law and order. Not anymore. The fragile veneer of civility, already thin, has been stripped away by the relentless fear and chaos, leaving only raw, primal instinct. The shadows seem to stretch and twist, becoming menacing figures. Every creak of distant wood, every rustle of wind, seems to carry a sinister whisper. You are utterly alone here, surrounded by the invisible presence of those who would take what little you have, or worse. The metallic taste of fear is a constant, bitter companion, a chilling reminder of the raw, dangerous reality of survival when the rules no longer apply. When the structures of society begin to fray, the truest, most ancient fears rise to the surface, and the battle for survival becomes not just against nature, but against the very nature of humanity itself. The metallic taste of fear still clings to your tongue, sharp and dry, a lingering echo of the unseen threats that lurk in the shadows. But now, as you cautiously emerge from the deeper alley, the street before you isn't bustling with market activity or shadowed by wary pedestrians. It's quiet, unnaturally quiet. Too quiet for midday, the kind of silence that stretches, thin and taut, making every distant creak of a shutter or whistle of wind feel ominous. The air, though still carrying the city's familiar stench, feels strangely hollow, as if the usual human presence has been sucked from it, leaving only a void. You pass an open stall, its wooden counter usually laden with loaves of bread or heaps of vegetables. Now it stands empty, upturned, a few bruised apples scattered on the muddy ground, slowly being trampled into the filth. No vendor is in sight, no hopeful customer haggling. Just the stark, silent evidence of sudden abandonment, or something worse. Your gaze catches on a window in an adjacent building, the glass smashed inward, jagged teeth of broken panes glinting in the weak light. Through the gaping hole, you glimpse the disarray within: an overturned chair, a torn piece of fabric, a hasty exit. It's a scene that speaks not of careful departure, but of hurried, desperate flight, or a brutal, opportunistic intrusion. Further down, a figure kneels beside a discarded cart, not seeking refuge, but systematically tearing at the canvas cover. They work with a quiet intensity. Their back to you. Their movements quick, almost furtive. You see them rip a piece of the coarse fabric free, then vanish into a darkened doorway, a shadowy ghost-like movement. There's no challenge, no protest, no other soul to bear witness. This isn't a shared moment of community. It's a solitary act, unobserved, unjudged, carried out with an almost animalistic efficiency. The usual social compacts, the unspoken rules that govern polite society, have simply dissolved, leaving behind a stark, self-serving reality. You continue walking, your boots now echoing a little too loudly in the hollow street. Your eyes instinctively scan not for potential friends, but for potential threats, or for signs of weakness, of vulnerability in others. The familiar landmarks of the city feel alien, distorted by this new, chilling atmosphere. Doors are ajar on homes that should be secured, revealing dark, silent interiors. A dog gnaws at something unidentifiable in a doorway, undisturbed, unchallenged. The pervasive sense of unseen eyes is gone. No one seems to be watching anymore, no one to enforce, no one to reprimand, and in that absence, a deeper, more profound darkness has begun to settle, not just in the shadows, but in the hearts of men. You can feel the shift, the lowering of a collective guard, the quiet unraveling of what it means to live amongst each other. When the structures of authority and mutual trust collapse, the true nature of human beings, stripped bare of oversight, often reveals a stark, unsettling capacity for both desperation and opportunistic cruelty. The biting winter wind whips around you, carrying with it the persistent, cloying scent of the city's decay. You're navigating a narrow, twisting alley, your boots sinking into the churned mud and refuse. Ahead, nestled in a doorway that offers scant protection, you see a small figure, a child. At first you barely register them, another small shadow against the pervasive gloom, another silent inhabitant of the struggling city. But something makes you pause, a flicker of something unsettling. You approach cautiously, your footsteps muffled by the mud. The child is perhaps 5 or 6 years old, their face thin, smudged with dirt, framed by unkempt hair. Their clothes are ragged, too thin for the biting cold, hanging loosely on their small frame. They're sitting on the cold, damp stone, a tattered piece of cloth clutched in one hand, their body still, almost unnervingly so. What truly stops you, what truly pulls at something deep within you, is their gaze. Their eyes, wide and unnervingly still, are fixed on something just beyond you, or perhaps on nothing at all. They are dark, not with curiosity or fear, not with the usual bright spark of childhood animation, but with a profound, unsettling vacancy. There's no light, no discernible thought, no flicker of response to the chill wind, the distant shouts, the very presence of a stranger. It's as if the world, with all its sights and sounds, has simply ceased to penetrate, leaving only an empty vessel behind. You try to catch their eye, to offer a small, reassuring nod, but their gaze remains unfocused, drifting over you as if you were another ghost in the dim light. Their hands, small and chapped, lie still in their lap, unmoving. There's no fidgeting, no restless energy, none of the small, spontaneous movements that mark a living child. You see the faint tremor in their lips, a shiver that runs through their thin shoulders, but it seems disconnected, a purely physical reaction, devoid of any emotional counterpart. It's a silence that screams louder than any cry, a stillness that feels more terrifying than any struggle. This isn't just a child suffering from cold or hunger. This is a child whose inner world has gone quiet, whose spirit has retreated to a place beyond reach, leaving only the hollow shell behind. The pervasive cold of the city suddenly feels deeper, more penetrating as you stand there, witnessing this profound, unsettling emptiness in a place that should be filled with laughter and curiosity. There are wounds that go deeper than the flesh, and losses that manifest not in tears or shouts, but in a profound, unsettling stillness of the soul, a vacancy that speaks of a suffering far too immense for words. The image of the child's vacant stare, that profound, unnerving stillness, clings to you as you move through the winding streets. It's a cold weight in your gut, not just a fleeting sadness, but a stark reminder of what this relentless world carves into the very young. You see it reflected, in subtle ways, in other children now. Their laughter, when it comes, is often too shrill, too quick to dissipate, like a fragile candle flame in a biting wind. Their play, when they manage it, is often a grim mimicry of adult struggles, small figures wrestling over a crust of bread, or enacting hurried burials with sticks and stones. You watch a small girl, no older than 7, haggling with a vendor in the market square. Her eyes hold none of the wide-eyed wonder you might expect. Instead, they are sharp, calculating, assessing the meager portions, the poor quality of the goods, with an almost adult cynicism. Her brow is furrowed with a seriousness that feels utterly out of place on such a small face. She clenches a few meager coins in her hand, her fingers thin and chapped, and her voice, though soft, carries an undercurrent of fierce determination, a hard edge born of necessity. She's not just buying food, she's fighting for it, for every scrap, for every fleeting moment of sustenance. You see her quickly snatch a dropped vegetable, an act of pure survival, and disappear into the crowd, her movements quick, almost furtive. No one scolds her, no one notices. It's simply the way of things, a silent, ingrained code. The usual boisterous energy of childhood feels absent here, replaced by a subdued wariness, a constant, low-grade tension that settles deep in their small shoulders. They walk with an oldness in their gait, their heads often bowed, their gazes fixed on the ground, searching for anything of value or simply avoiding the harsh realities of the world above. You try to recall a time when children here laughed freely, when their spirits weren't already so burdened. The memory is vague, hazy, almost like a dream. It feels like this quiet, watchful endurance, this early hardening, has always been their inheritance. You pass a group of older boys, no more than 10 or 12, huddled in an alley, their faces smudged with dirt and a kind of fierce pride. Their eyes, once perhaps filled with youthful mischief, now hold a guardedness, a readiness for confrontation. They are learning to navigate a world where kindness is a luxury and self-preservation is paramount, quickly shedding the innocence that should define their years. This isn't just a generation surviving a crisis. It's a generation being fundamentally reshaped by it, their spirits forged in the crucible of constant want and fear, leaving scars that may never truly fade, a profound legacy etched into their very being. The truest wounds of an unforgiving age are often borne silently by the young, shaping their spirits not with joy or wonder, but with a deep, enduring resilience that becomes their most profound, and perhaps most tragic, inheritance. You step onto the open road, leaving the relative shelter of the city's crooked lanes behind, and the wind immediately assaults you. It's not a gentle breeze, but a fierce, relentless force, howling down from the barren hills, tearing at your threadbare cloak, and biting savagely at every exposed inch of your skin. It carries with it the sharp, clean scent of frost and distant, damp earth, but also a raw, untamed wildness that is both exhilarating and terrifying. You pull your hood tighter, burying your chin into your chest, but it offers scant defense against the bitter onslaught. Your eyes water, streaming from the cold, blurring the already stark landscape. The road ahead is a bleak, unforgiving ribbon of churned mud and frozen ruts, stretching endlessly into the gray, overcast distance. The bare branches of skeletal trees lining the path whip and thrash, their mournful creaks and groans swallowed by the wind's insistent roar. Every step is an effort, your boots sinking into the soft earth, then jarring against hidden stones. The wind pushes against you, a tangible, physical weight, trying to force you back, to halt your progress. You lean into it, shoulders hunched, fighting for every inch. Your hands, already numb and chapped, ache deep in your bones. You try to rub them together, but the cold has seeped too deep, a persistent, internal chill that no amount of friction seems to dislodge. Your face feels raw, numb from the exposure, the skin tight and stinging. You can almost feel the wind stripping away any lingering warmth, any vestige of comfort, leaving you utterly exposed, utterly vulnerable. This isn't just unpleasant weather, it's an elemental battle, a relentless trial of endurance against a powerful, indifferent foe. Ahead, you see other figures, small, stooped silhouettes against the vast, empty landscape. They too are battling the wind, their movements slow and heavy, their heads down, each a solitary struggle against the overwhelming force. There's no camaraderie, no shared glances of commiseration, just a grim individual determination to keep moving, to keep pushing forward into the unknown. The sheer emptiness of the landscape, the boundless gray sky, the distant, desolate horizon, all combine to create a profound sense of isolation. You are a tiny, insignificant speck against the colossal power of nature. and the wind is a constant howling reminder of your fragility, a relentless whisper of the vast, uncaring world. The open road, so often a symbol of freedom and possibility, can also become a stark, brutal arena where the very elements test the limits of human endurance, revealing a profound and humbling vulnerability. The biting wind on the open road is a relentless companion, a constant physical reminder of the vast, unforgiving world you have chosen to brave. You keep walking, one heavy, mud-caked boot after another, your gaze fixed on the distant horizon, a vague, uncertain promise of escape. You hope to find a village untouched, a quiet corner where the terror has not yet spread, where life still holds some semblance of its former rhythm. This journey, fraught with bone-deep cold and nagging hunger, is fueled by a desperate, almost fragile hope. But as you press on, the landscape, initially a bleak expanse, begins to reveal its stark truths. You pass a cluster of abandoned farmhouses, their roofs caved in, their fields choked with weeds. The silence here is profound, a heavy, unsettling quiet that speaks not of peace, but of absence. The wind whistles through broken window panes, a mournful, hollow sound that echoes the hollowness in your own chest. There's no smoke from a hearth, no distant bark of a dog, no sign of human presence. Only the cold, stark evidence of lives abruptly interrupted, or simply vanished. The hope that pulled you forward feels a little thinner, a little more distant. Further down the road, you encounter a cart, overturned in a ditch, its contents scattered across the muddy ground. A broken wooden bowl, a child's worn shoe, a few stalks of rotting cabbage. The sight is a punch to the gut, a grim tableau of a desperate flight gone wrong, or a sudden, brutal ending. You scan the surrounding fields, your eyes straining, but see no movement, no sign of life. Just the relentless, empty expanse, stretching beneath a heavy, gray sky. The biting wind whispers through the sparse vegetation, and in its mournful sigh, you almost hear the echo of lost voices, of unfulfilled journeys. The realization begins to settle, cold and heavy, in the pit of your stomach. This journey, this desperate flight, feels less and less like an escape, and more like a simple relocation of the same unyielding struggle. The plague, the hunger, the fear, the isolation, they don't seem to be confined to the city walls. They are woven into the very fabric of the land, carried on the bitter wind, lurking in every silent, abandoned dwelling. The world itself seems to have shrunk, its vastness now an illusion, merely a larger stage for the same ubiquitous suffering. You pull your cloak tighter, not just against the physical cold, but against the chilling truth that has begun to dawn. There is nowhere truly safe, no sanctuary, no true escape from the pervasive shadows of this age. You are simply moving through a wider, emptier version of the same despair, carrying the heavy burden of your hope, now tinged with the bitter taste of fading illusion. Sometimes, the greatest torment is not the visible danger, but the gradual, crushing realization that the very act of seeking escape is itself an illusion, and that the profound weight of a suffering world has followed you, quietly, wherever you go. You're huddled by the window of your small room, trying to catch a sliver of the weak winter light from mending. The air is cold, thick with the scent of damp wool and stale air, but it's the quiet that truly presses in. The street outside is unusually still, even for this desolate time, its silence heavier, more profound than usual. Every small sound is amplified. The distant creak of a cart, the persistent drip of water from a leaky roof, the faint rustle of dry leaves skittering across the cobblestones. Then, from the window directly across the narrow alley, you hear it. A soft, almost imperceptible rustle. It's the sound of coarse fabric, a curtain perhaps, being drawn slightly aside. You freeze, your needle poised mid-air, your breath catching in your throat. Your eyes, accustomed to scanning for threats, dart instinctively to that window. The light there is dim, a mere smudge against the general gloom, but you feel an intense, unseen gaze. Is someone watching? You don't see a face. Not clearly. Just a deeper shadow. A faint impression of movement behind the grimy pane. But the feeling of being observed is palpable. A cold prickle on your skin. It's not a friendly glance, not a neighborly acknowledgement. This feels different, charged with a subtle tension, a quiet assessment. Is it curiosity, suspicion, or simply another lonely soul, peering out into a world that has become too dangerous, too unpredictable to venture into freely? The silence that follows the rustle stretches, taut and heavy, filled with unspoken questions and unvoiced fears. You instinctively lower your head, pretending to focus on your mending, but your senses are screaming, hyper-attuned to the space across the way. You can almost feel the weight of their gaze, the unspoken thought passing between your hovel and theirs. In this time of plague and despair, every interaction, even an unseen one, is fraught with new meaning. People no longer greet each other with easy familiarity. Instead, there's a guardedness, a cautious distance, a fear that any contact, any shared breath, could carry the invisible menace. The rustle of that curtain, so small, so insignificant in other times, now feels like a signal, a brief, fleeting connection in a world that pushes everyone further and further apart. You don't look up again, not directly, but the awareness of that unseen watcher, that silent, distant presence, stays with you, a chilling reminder of the fragile, fractured bonds that now hold this community together. When communal trust erodes and fear becomes the default, even the smallest, most mundane sounds and gestures between neighbors can become charged with unspoken anxieties, transforming simple observation into a silent, potent act of wary surveillance. You're out in the street, the cold, damp air biting at your cheeks, but the chill that truly settles in your bones is far more insidious than the weather. You hear it first as a low murmur, a rapid exchange of hushed voices just outside the baker's shop, a place usually bustling with open chatter and the comforting scent of fresh bread. But today, the air is thick with a different aroma, the acrid tang of fear mixed with something else, something sharp and disquieting. You approach cautiously, drawn by the unnatural urgency in their tones. A small cluster of people are gathered, their heads closed, their eyes darting nervously around. You catch fragments of their whispered words. They say, "He saw it," a mark on her door. Your stomach clenches, a familiar cold knot tightening. This isn't just gossip. It's a seed of suspicion, carefully planted. You see a woman with a worn shawl pulled tight around her face, her eyes wide with a frantic mix of fear and conviction. She nods vigorously as another man speaks, his voice low and conspiratorial, about a strange illness appearing in a particular part of town, among particular families, almost as if it were a choice, a deliberate act. Your gaze travels to the street, normally a chaotic tapestry of life, now feeling like a stage for unspoken accusations. You notice how people subtly shift their weight, avoiding eye contact with certain homes, certain individuals. There's a particular house across the way, its windows dark, its door firmly shut. No unusual marks, no overt signs, but the hushed glances, the quick, meaningful nods between the whispering group, are enough. The silence emanating from that house now feels heavy, charged with an invisible guilt, a secret culpability. The words, though fragmented, form a chilling narrative in your mind, a story of blame, of a search for a human face to pin the incomprehensible horror upon. It's easier to point a finger, to believe in a deliberate malice, than to accept the random, devastating indifference of the plague. You can feel the shift in the air, the way the community is subtly fracturing, poisoned by these whispers. Trust, already a fragile thing, is eroding, replaced by a pervasive, creeping paranoia. You see a young woman, her face pale, glance towards the silent house, then quickly cross herself, her lips moving in a silent prayer, not for the sick, but perhaps for protection from the ones who are different, the ones who are being singled out. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the cold not just on your skin, but in the heart of the city itself. A cold, born of fear, twisted into falsehood. The truth, you realize, has become a casualty as devastating as any disease, swallowed whole by the desperate need to find a culprit, to make sense of a senseless world, even if that sense is built on a foundation of lies. When fear overtakes understanding, the truth becomes an early casualty, and the insidious spread of suspicion can prove as destructive to a community as any physical contagion. The biting wind has softened, carrying a new scent on its breath, one you haven't truly noticed in months. You're walking on the outskirts of town, the familiar, cloying stench of the city slowly giving way to something lighter, cleaner. The sun, weak but persistent, has begun to touch the frozen ground, coaxing forth tiny green shoots in patches where the snow has receded. The air feels less heavy, less saturated with dread, though the weight of countless losses still presses down on the land. You approach the edge of the large communal burial ground, the place where the earth has been turned over and over, swallowing so many. The ground here is still raw, a vast, scarred landscape of churned mud and hastily filled trenches. The air, even here, still carries a faint, sickening undertone, the lingering ghost of decay that no amount of earth can fully contain. You brace yourself for the familiar assault on your senses, the grim acceptance of what lies beneath. But then, it hits you. A delicate, insistent fragrance, subtle at first, then growing stronger, surprising you with its clear, bright notes. It's the smell of wildflowers, tiny, resolute blossoms, in hues of pale purple and yellow, pushing their way up through the cold, damp soil, through the very earth that covers the dead. They cluster in small, defiant patches, their petals shivering slightly in the gentle breeze. You bend down, almost involuntarily, your fingers brushing against their tender leaves. The unexpected softness, a jarring contrast to the harshness that surrounds them. The scent is pure, untainted, a startling burst of fresh, living perfume against the somber backdrop of the grave. You stand there for a moment, breathing it in, letting the clean, sweet aroma fill your lungs, pushing back against the lingering stench of death. It's a surreal experience, this fragile beauty blooming amidst such profound sorrow. The wildflowers offer no explanation, no comfort, no miracle cure, yet their very presence feels like a quiet, undeniable statement. They simply exist, growing in the churned earth, drawing sustenance from the very ground that holds so much loss. They are small, insignificant bursts of color and fragrance, yet in this desolate place, they feel like an immense, powerful force, a silent testament to something utterly resilient. You reach out, letting your fingertip graze a single fragile petal, feeling its delicate, cool texture, a tiny touch of unexpected grace in a world that has been relentlessly harsh. Even in the most desolate landscapes, life, in its quiet, insistent determination, finds a way to assert itself, blooming in defiance, offering a subtle, profound testament to cycles that persist beyond human comprehension and sorrow. You stand at the edge of the burial ground, the scent of the wildflowers still clinging faintly to the damp air. Their delicate petals shiver in the gentle breeze, a small, vibrant splash of defiance against the stark, churned earth. You look closer, noticing the busy dance of insects, tiny iridescent beetles scuttling over the new green shoots, oblivious to the profound stillness beneath. A fat bumblebee, newly emerged from winter's slumber, hovers clumsily over a yellow blossom, its fuzzy body vibrant with a singular, relentless purpose. It's a scene of unexpected life, flourishing in the very heart of so much death, a stark, unsettling contrast. Your gaze drifts from the immediate beauty to the larger landscape. The fields beyond the burial pits, once fallow with winter, now show faint signs of emerging green, a subtle softening of the earth's harsh lines. A bird, small and quick, darts from a skeletal branch. Its song, a series of bright, piercing notes that cut through the silence, utterly unburdened by the human tragedy unfolding beneath its flight path. Its small, clawed feet gather a piece of loose straw, preparing for a nest, a future, an inevitable continuation that feels completely detached from the human struggle for survival. You watch it go, a fleeting shadow against the vast, indifferent sky, its simple, instinctual actions a world apart from your own burdened existence. You feel a strange, hollow ache in your chest. This surging life, this relentless renewal, isn't for Chokyu. It's not a celebration of human perseverance or a divine promise of comfort. It is simply the way of the world, a deep, ancient rhythm that predates and will outlast any human suffering, any plague, any despair. The earth turns, the seasons shift, and life, in countless forms, finds its pathways, irrespective of the lives lost, the tears shed, the hopes extinguished. The very ground you stand on, heavy with human sorrow, is simultaneously a vibrant crucible of new growth, uncaring, relentless. You brush a hand over the cool, damp soil, feeling the tiny shoots beneath your fingertips, their resilience almost unsettling in its indifference. This natural cycle of birth and death, of decay feeding new life, feels cold, almost brutal, in its dispassionate efficiency. The air carries the promise of spring, a faint warmth on your face, but it offers no solace, no direct balm for your own persistent hunger. or the gnawing dread that lives in your gut. Life finds a way, yes, but it's a way that doesn't pause for grief, doesn't mourn the dead, doesn't offer comfort to the living. It's simply less noise, a vast, impersonal force, a quiet, insistent hum that vibrates beneath the surface of the world, moving onward, always onward, without you, without anyone, truly at its center. There is a profound, almost terrifying beauty in the relentless, indifferent march of nature. A cycle that offers no comfort, but a stark, undeniable truth about the vastness of existence beyond our fragile human dramas. The air is still, heavy with the persistent dampness and the faint, sweet decay that clings to every corner of the city. You're walking past the old church, its stone walls weathered and ancient, when a sound slices through the silence. It's a sharp, dry scrape, followed by another, then another, a chilling, repetitive friction that seems to grate against your very teeth. You stop, your worn boots silent on the muddy ground, and turn your head slowly towards the sound, a knot of apprehension tightening in your gut. Against the rough, gray stone of the church wall, a figure stands, their back to you. They are not painting, not decorating. In their hand, they hold a piece of charcoal, black and stark against the pale, ancient stone. With slow, deliberate movements, they are drawing a crude, unmistakable symbol. It's a cross, large and stark, drawn with a grim precision. As the charcoal scrapes, a fine black dust puffs from the wall, carried away by the slightest breeze, leaving a raw, dark mark. The sound is unsettling, a raw, grating whisper that speaks of a desperate purpose, a public declaration in a time when declarations are often dangerous. You can't see their face, only the hunched curve of their shoulders, the focused intensity of their actions. But you can feel the weight of their purpose, the solemnity of their task. Other figures emerge from the shadows, drawn by the sound, their movements slow and wary. They gather in a small, silent semicircle, their eyes fixed on the charcoal mark, their faces etched with a mix of fear, understanding, and a shared, unspoken dread. No one speaks. The only sounds are the scrape of the charcoal, the shallow breaths of the onlookers, and the distant, mournful cry of a raven. The air feels charged, not with panic, but with a deep, unsettling certainty. As the figure finishes the cross, they step back, revealing the stark black symbol against the gray stone. It's crude, but undeniable. And beneath it, with the same chilling scrape, they begin to add another mark. A small, dark circle, almost like a bubo, a visual echo of the horror that stalks the city. The charcoal scrapes, the dust flies, and the symbol of sickness is added to the symbol of faith, a stark, public testament to the pervasive, unyielding reality of their time. You feel the cold seep into your very bones, a chill that has nothing to do with the winter air, and everything to do with this grim, public acknowledgement, this silent confession etched into the very stones of their sanctuary. In times of overwhelming, incomprehensible threat, humanity often inscribes its fears and its desperate prayers directly onto the very foundations of its existence, creating stark, public reminders of its profound vulnerability and its enduring, if grim, struggle for survival. The image of the charcoal marks, those stark symbols of illness and death, lingers in your mind, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread. But then, as you turn a corner, a new sound cuts through the familiar urban hum. It's music, yes, but unlike any you've heard recently. Not the mournful chants of the church, nor the distant, sorrowful pipes of a funeral procession. This is a frantic, almost desperate rhythm, the sharp, reedy wail of a pipe, accompanied by the insistent, erratic beat of a drum. It's a discordant, wild sound that pulls at something primal within you, drawing you forward. You follow the sound, your worn boots splashing through puddles in the muddy street. It leads you to a small, open square, not a market, not a place of worship, but a space suddenly transformed. Here, a small crowd has gathered. Their faces are gaunt, their eyes ringed with exhaustion, their clothes stained and worn, yet they are moving. Dancing. Not with joy, not with celebration, but with a strange, frenetic energy. Their movements are stiff, almost jerky, as if their bodies are resisting, yet they press on, a desperate communal release. You join the edges of the crowd, feeling the low thrum of their movement beneath your feet, the shared ragged breaths in the cold air. A man throws his head back, his mouth open in a soundless cry, his body twisting in a grotesque parody of revelry. A woman, her hair wild, spins in a tight circle, her eyes wide and unfocused, as if lost in some internal battle. Their hands, some clasped together, others flailing freely, seem to be reaching for something or pushing something away. The musicians, their faces equally drawn, play with a fierce, almost manic intensity, their music a relentless, driving force that seems to whip the dancers into a deeper frenzy. The air is thick with the scent of their exertion, of stale sweat and desperation, mingling with the ever-present city stench. This isn't happiness. It's a collective fever, a shared delusion, a desperate attempt to outrun the shadow that stalks them all. You can feel the tension in the space, a palpable thread that weaves through every frantic spin, every stomping foot. It's a dance with death itself, a defiant, if futile, gesture against the inevitable. You see a flicker of wildness in a dancer's eye, a desperate joy that borders on hysteria, as if by moving, by losing themselves in this frantic rhythm, they can somehow cheat the relentless march of fate, even for a fleeting moment. The cold outside melts away, replaced by an internal heat, a strange, intoxicating energy that pulses through the crowd, a raw, primal scream made manifest in movement. When life becomes an unbearable burden, and the specter of death looms over every breath, humanity often finds solace, or perhaps a fleeting sanity, in a frantic, almost ritualistic embrace of chaos, a defiant dance against the encroaching darkness. You push open the heavy, unlatched wooden door, and the first thing that strikes you isn't a sight or a sound, but a breath of air. It's thin, cool, and surprisingly clean, completely devoid of the usual thick, cloying stench of the city. A faint, almost imperceptible current of fresh air moves through the space, carrying with it the crisp scent of cold stone and dry, undisturbed wood. You step inside, your worn boots echoing too loudly on the packed earth floor, and close the door gently behind you, the soft thud sounding jarringly loud in the sudden, profound quiet. The house is empty, utterly, completely empty. The air feels different here, not just cleaner, but lighter, almost hollow, You breathe deeply, an involuntary action, and the fresh air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the stale, heavy breath you've grown accustomed to. There's no hint of wood smoke, no lingering human musk, no scent of damp earth or refuse, just the pure, unburdened smell of an unused space, a profound absence of life. It's unsettling, this lack of presence, yet there's a strange, almost liberating quality to it, a sense of quietude that feels almost alien after months of constant, suffocating closeness. Your gaze drifts around the small, single room. Dust motes dance in the slivers of weak light, filtering through a high, grimy window, suspended in the stillness. A rough-hewn table stands in the center, bare and unpolished, its surface clean of the usual everyday clutter. The hearth is cold, dark, a gaping mouth that offers no warmth, only a deeper shadow. Everything is in its place, or what might have been its place, but the life that animated these objects, that filled this space with noise and warmth and human presence, is gone. It's as if the inhabitants simply evaporated, leaving behind only the quiet echoes of their absence. You walk slowly across the room, your footsteps strangely loud on the bare earth. You run a hand over the wooden table, feeling the smooth, cool grain beneath your fingertips. There's no grime, no sticky residue, just the clean, dry touch of old wood. It's a strange, almost unsettling purity in a world so saturated with filth. You can feel the cold radiating from the stone walls, but it's a clean cold, not the damp, clinging chill you're used to. You stand in the center of the room, taking another deep breath, letting the clean air fill your lungs. It tastes of nothing, of absence, and yet, in its emptiness, there's a profound, almost terrifying peace, a silence that speaks volumes about the lives that once filled it, and the stark reality of their abrupt, unexplained departure. In the face of overwhelming loss, sometimes the greatest impact comes not from the clamor of suffering, but from the profound, unsettling silence of absence. A clean emptiness that speaks volumes about lives that simply ceased to be. The unsettling quiet of the empty house wraps around you. A cold, clean silence that feels heavier than any noise. You stand amidst the vacant space, the profound absence of life, pressing down. The clean air, so surprising at first, now seems to amplify the stillness, making your own breathing sound jarringly loud, your heartbeat a frantic drum against the emptiness. You breathe again, deeply, and feel an odd tremor, a sense of intrusion, as if your very presence is a disruption, a discordant note in this silent elegy. Your eyes drift over the bare, unpolished table. A shallow depression on its surface might once have held a favorite bowl, a place where hands rested, where voices chatted. You see the faint scorch mark on the hearth where a fire once burned, casting flickering light and warmth into this now frigid room. Every detail, every subtle imperfection, whispers of a life that was, a warmth that is gone, a presence that has simply ceased. You touch the cold stone of the wall, imagining the hands that built it, the lives that moved within its shelter. They are all gone, vanished, leaving behind only the stark architecture of their absence. And you are here, standing in their silence, breathing their clean air, a survivor in a world that has swallowed so many. A prickle of unease starts in your gut, slowly growing into a cold, heavy weight. Why them? Why not you? The question, unspoken, feels like an accusation, a silent condemnation whispered by the very walls around you. You look down at your own worn boots, solid on the packed earth, at your own calloused hands, still capable of work, at your own body, still breathing, still enduring. The sheer, inexplicable fact of your continued existence, in this place of such profound absence, feels less like a blessing and more like a burden, a heavy mantle of undeserved reprieve. The chilling truth begins to settle. You are a living ghost in a world of the departed, carrying the unbearable weight of having simply continued. The clean air of the empty house, once a stark surprise, now feels like a shroud, and the silence a mirror reflecting back not just their absence, but the unsettling, profound reality of your own, lonely, inexplicable survival. You feel the cold seep into your very bones, a chill that has nothing to do with the winter air and everything to do with the heavy, gnawing guilt of being the one left behind, the one still standing in the quiet, echoing chamber of a world that has fundamentally changed. In a world reshaped by relentless loss, the act of living itself can become a profound and isolating burden, a silent question whispered by every empty space. Why me and not them? You push open the heavy, unlatched door of what used to be a bustling carpenter's workshop. The air inside is cold, dry, and surprisingly clean, carrying the faint, lingering scent of sawdust and aged wood, a ghost of industriousness. But it's the silence that truly envelops you, a profound, echoing quiet that presses in from all sides, making your own ragged breath sound impossibly loud. This isn't the productive hum of tools, the shouts of apprentices, or the rhythmic rasp of a saw. This is the silence of absence, of abandoned purpose. Your worn boots scuff softly across the packed earth floor, and the sound seems to reverberate through the empty space, a solitary disruption in a world that has fallen profoundly still. You gaze around the room, taking in the tools, still hanging neatly on wooden pegs along the wall, hammers, chisels, saws of various sizes. They glint faintly in the weak, gray light filtering through the high, grimy window, each one a silent sentinel to a craft no longer practiced. You reach out, almost instinctively, and touch the smooth, cool handle of a plane, feeling the polished wood, the sharp edge of the blade. It's perfectly preserved, a testament to the skill and care of its former owner, yet utterly inert, devoid of the warmth of a craftsman's hand. On a workbench, a half-finished chair sits, its frame already shaped, its joints waiting to be fastened. A few wood shavings curl like golden ribbons around its base, frozen in time. You run a hand over the smooth, unvarnished wood, feeling its raw texture, the subtle curve of a leg. It's a snapshot of a moment interrupted, a task unfinished, a future unbuilt. The air is thick with these unspoken stories, these silent promises of creation that have been abruptly, irrevocably broken. The scent of pine and oak, usually comforting, now feels melancholy, a reminder of the vibrant life that once filled this space. You notice a small carved bird, unfinished, lying on the bench beside the chair. Its delicate wings are yet to be smoothed, its eyes still blank. It lies there, waiting, a frozen fragment of beauty that will never take flight. The cold of the room deepens, sinking into your bones, and you pull your threadbare cloak tighter, a futile gesture against the profound chill of loss that pervades this space. This isn't just an empty room. It's a monument to a life, a craft, a future that has been silenced, leaving behind only the echoing quiet of its permanent, irreplaceable absence. There is a profound ache that comes not from destruction, but from the sudden, inexplicable cessation of creativity, where the tools of life lie dormant, eternally awaiting the touch of hands that will never return. You kick at something dull in the churned mud, your worn boots scraping against a flash of unexpected color. You pause, the persistent cold biting at your exposed hands, and bend down slowly, a dull ache in your lower back protesting the movement. It's a velvet slipper, deep crimson, embroidered with faded gold thread, now caked in filth and soaking wet. This isn't the shoe of a farmer. This is the relic of undeniable luxury, lying discarded and utterly worthless in the same gutter where refuse from the street slowly rots. The thick stench of damp earth and decay feels heavier, almost cloying, around this forgotten elegance, as if the very squalor of the city actively mocks its former splendor. You nudge it with the toe of your boot, observing its pathetic state. The velvet, surprisingly soft beneath the mud, speaks of pampered feet and grand halls. It's now just detritus, destined to sink deeper into the muck, a forgotten symbol of a world that no longer exists. The silence of this formerly wealthy district is profound, broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a raven and an unsettling creak of a shutter. Houses once boasting intricate carvings and gleaming windows now stand with doors ajar, their interiors dark, hollowed out, stripped of anything useful. No liveried guards patrol these desolate streets, no bustling servants. The air, once scented with perfumes, now carries only the sickly sweet aroma of abandonment, tinged with general decay. A few emaciated dogs root through a pile of what might once have been fine linens, tearing at them, their desperate hunger recognizing no difference between silk and sackcloth. You see a man, face gaunt, clothes threadbare and patched, emerge from a prosperous merchant's house. He carries not gold, but a single half-eaten loaf of stale bread, clutched tightly as if it were the most precious treasure. His eyes, sunken and wary, scan the desolate street, not for a patron, but for another scavenger. Status, accumulated wealth, all feel like distant, irrelevant dreams here, utterly drowned by the brutal reality of survival. The elaborate structures of power that once defined this city now lie shattered, their foundations eroded by a terror that respects no crown or coffers. The velvet slipper, once a symbol of privilege, now serves only as a stark, silent testament to a world that has utterly inverted its values. Gold is meaningless if it cannot buy bread. Power is dissolved by sickness and the cold indifference of death. You leave the slipper in the mud, its brief, fragile flicker of opulence quickly fading into the pervasive grime, and continue your walk, your own gnawing hunger, a far more pressing concern than any forgotten finery. The profound silence here, in these once grand streets, hums with the chilling truth. The old order has crumbled, replaced by a stark, brutal new reality, where only basic elemental needs hold true currency, and where the human spirit is forced to redefine what truly holds value. You're huddled by the meager fire in your hovel, the rough wool of your tunic offering scant warmth against the persistent cold that seeps from the stone walls. The air is thick with smoke and the familiar, stale scent of unwashed bodies. You are trying to mend a tear in your cloak, your fingers stiff and clumsy from the cold, when a shadow falls across the flickering light. You look up, your gaze meeting another's across the small, crowded space. Their face is gaunt, their eyes tired, but there's a flicker of something new there, something tentative. They are holding out a small, gnarled root, perhaps a turnip, a rare and precious find in these lean times. You stare at it, then at their face, a flicker of suspicion immediately rising in your gut. Why? What do they want? Every interaction these days is fraught with unspoken demands, with desperate calculations. Yet their hand remains extended, unwavering, the small offering held out in the dim light. The smell of the root is earthy, clean, a stark contrast to the pervasive stench of decay that usually fills your senses. Slowly, carefully, you reach out. Your fingertips brush against their palm, a brief, fleeting contact that sends a jolt through you. Their skin is cool, dry, rough, with work, but also surprisingly soft in a way you haven't felt from another person in what feels like an age. It's not the hurried brush of bodies in the market, not the impersonal contact of a doctor, but a deliberate, chosen touch, tentative and fragile. You feel the faint warmth of their skin, a ghost of connection in a world that has pushed everyone into profound isolation. The root feels solid, real, in your palm, its rough skin, a grounding presence. You nod, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of acceptance and gratitude. They nod back, a flicker of something like relief, or perhaps a shared vulnerability, in their tired eyes. No words are exchanged. There's no need. The silent offering, the hesitant touch, the shared understanding in their gaze. It all speaks volumes about the fragile, enduring threads that still connect people in a world that seems determined to tear them apart. The warmth of the root in your hand, so small, so simple, radiates a deeper comfort than any fire, a warmth that reaches beyond the physical, touching something long dormant within you. You feel a strange lightness in your chest, a momentary lifting of the crushing weight of isolation. In a world stripped bare of comfort and trust, the smallest, most hesitant gesture of shared humanity, a simple offering, a gentle touch, can become a profound and unexpected act of connection, reminding us of the enduring, fragile threads that still bind us. You sit across from them, the offered root, a small, tangible warmth in your hand, a silent bond between you. The fire crackles faintly, casting dancing shadows on the grimy walls, making the small, crowded space feel both intimate and strangely vast. You break a piece off the root, raising it to your mouth. Its earthy, slightly bitter taste is grounding, a realness that cuts through the pervasive sense of unreality. You chew slowly, deliberately, savoring the simple act of eating, of receiving. You glance up. Their eyes are on you, not with expectation, but with a quiet, watchful understanding. There's a shared fragility in their gaze, a vulnerability that mirrors your own. You feel a strange loosening in your chest, a gentle unwinding of the tight knot of isolation that has bound you for so long. The usual guardedness, the instinct to retreat and protect, begins to soften, replaced by a subtle, unexpected sense of belonging. The air, thick with the smell of smoke and unwashed bodies, now feels less oppressive, more like a shared atmosphere, a collective breath. You offer a piece of the root back to them. Their hand reaches out, slowly, mirroring your earlier hesitation. Their fingers brush yours again, a fleeting, almost imperceptible contact, But this time it feels different. Less a jolt, more a gentle reinforcement, a quiet affirmation. The warmth of their skin, the rough texture of their palm, registers not as a threat, but as a connection, a tether in a world that has pulled so many adrift. The silence between you is no longer empty, but filled with the unspoken weight of shared hardship, shared fear, and now a shared moment of unexpected grace. You realize it's not just the food, the simple act of sustenance, that feels so potent. It's the silent acknowledgement, the shared humanity, the quiet recognition in their eyes that you are not, in fact, utterly alone in this relentless, brutal existence. This fragile moment, born of a simple offering, blossoms into something far greater, a profound reminder of the primal, undeniable need for connection, for touch, for witness to your own weary struggle. The warmth from the small root spreads, not just in your belly, but deeper. A faint ember rekindled in the cold, dark corners of your spirit. A fragile, persistent spark against the overwhelming despair. Even when hope seems to have abandoned the world, and every instinct screams for isolation, the deepest human need persists. A quiet, unwavering current, pulling us towards the fragile, enduring solace of shared presence. The old man sits across from you by the meager fire, its flickering light casting long, dancing shadows on his face. The air, thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, feels heavy, yet surprisingly intimate in this small, shared space. You're both silent, the unspoken weight of your shared existence, a comfortable, if somber, companion. Your gaze drifts to his hand, resting on his knee, gnarled and thick with the marks of countless years of labor. You notice it then, a long, thin scar, a pale ribbon winding across the back of his hand, disappearing beneath the rough cuff of his tunic. It's an old scar, faded almost to invisibility against his weathered skin, but distinct. A subtle ridge that speaks of a past injury, a moment of pain long since healed. You reach out, slowly, your fingers hesitant, and gently trace its path. The skin beneath your touch is cool, dry, and surprisingly resilient, like old leather. You can feel the faint indentation of the scar tissue, a subtle unevenness against the general smoothness of his skin. He doesn't flinch, doesn't pull away. His gaze is fixed on the fire, lost in some distant thought. But his hand remains still beneath yours, a quiet acceptance of your touch. You follow the line of the scar, feeling its texture, its story. It's a testament to endurance, a physical record of a moment when his body was broken, then mended. What wound created it? A farming accident? A skirmish? A desperate struggle for survival in a world that has always demanded such things. The scar offers no answers, only a profound sense of history, of resilience, etched onto the very flesh. Your fingers linger on the faded mark, feeling the subtle pulse beneath his skin, a steady, unwavering beat that speaks of enduring life. This scar, so simple, so understated, feels like a map of countless battles fought and won, not with glory or fanfare, but with the quiet, relentless persistence of the human body. It's a physical manifestation of survival, a silent promise that even profound wounds can close, leaving behind only the ghost of their passing, a story told in silent skin. The fire crackles, a small, warm heart in the chill room, and you continue to trace the scar, feeling the deep, unspoken history that connects this worn hand to the long, arduous journey of a life truly lived. The human body is a living archive. Its scars not merely marks of injury, but silent, powerful narratives of resilience, endurance, and the quiet, persistent victory of simply continuing to be. You continue to sit by the meager fire, the old man across from you, his gnarled hand, etched with the faded scar, resting quietly on his knee. The fire offers a small, temporary warmth, pushing back the immediate chill, but you can still feel the persistent cold seeping from the stone walls. A low hum of discomfort that has become as much a part of the air as the wood smoke and damp earth. The scar on his hand tells a story of a moment, a specific wound that healed, leaving its mark. But looking at his whole being, the deep lines etched around his eyes, the slow, deliberate way he moves, the profound weariness that seems to settle in his very bones. You realize the scar is just one small chapter in a much longer narrative of constant endurance. Your own body echoes this truth. The gnawing ache in your stomach, the stiffness in your joints, the persistent irritation of the rough wool against your skin. These aren't sudden afflictions brought by any single catastrophe. They are the constant, familiar companions of your daily existence, a relentless background hum to life itself. The air you breathe, thick with the subtle stench of decay and unwashed bodies, has always tasted this way, always felt this heavy. The ground underfoot, perpetually muddy and cold, has always demanded effort with every step. These are not unusual circumstances. They are the texture of the world, the unyielding climate in which you and all those around you have always lived. The plague, when it came, felt like a terrible storm, yes, a brutal, unforeseen squall that tore through the fragile tapestry of life. But even as the storm raged, and now as its most violent winds seemed to recede, you understand that it merely intensified what was already present. It didn't create the cold or the hunger or the filth or the constant low-grade fear that defines this age. It simply sharpened their edges, made them more acute, more deadly. Life here was already a continuous battle against the elements, against illness, against scarcity, against the very slow, grinding weariness of existence. You watch the old man's chest rise and fall, a slow, steady rhythm, as he stares into the flames, his gaze distant. His life, like yours, is a testament to persistent survival, not just of a great sickness, but of a greater, pervasive hardship. The scar on his hand is a mark of a battle won, perhaps, but the real victory lies in the sheer, undeniable fact of his continued breathing, his quiet presence, a life lived through a climate of unceasing demand, where the moments of respite are fleeting and precious, and the true challenge is simply to keep going, day after day, year after year. Sometimes, the most profound and enduring struggles are not the sudden, dramatic events that define an era, but the relentless, inescapable climate of everyday life itself, demanding a quiet, unending resilience that often goes unheralded.